So he would give me his Catholic interpretation, and then I would go to the non-denominational church, and then they would say some stuff, and I was like, those two don't match. Why is that? Oh no, I'm in the wrong place. Do your research. Like, fact check that.
It was just nuts.
Yeah.
And how we just talked about it, just like, yeah, the dude's neck snapped back, and his fangs were like 2 inches long, and hissed like a cat.
He was like, yeah, this is just, once you've seen it 1,000 times, it doesn't affect you. I was like, whoa, how many times?
That's the crazy thing with especially people that go through experiences like that. They typically they say the most crazy stuff in the most calm manner possible.
Yeah, just
right?
straight face.
I met an exorcist. Actually, I went to an exorcism. I was at an exorcism at a house.
Like you viewed it?
I was there. It wasn't like it was more of like a blessing the house type thing with like the exorcism rite and everything that was going on. In certain parts of like a house were like blessed.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who did it was this like Hungarian monk.
Oh.
Who just said everything in just the most like calm manner, like just nothing, like the fact of like what was going on was just crazy. Like,
Yeah.
It was an exorcist. Like he's literally like pushing spirits out of a place.
Yeah.
But he was just doing like, in nomine patri filio et spiritus sanctus. Like, just like his facial face, like his shape did not change once.
Well, what was he saying on that podcast? He was saying something about like how like you can't entertain it. You can't like have like a necessary reaction to it, because that's what they want. Like they want you to react to it. They want something they can latch onto. And he was talking about something along the lines of like not having people like come and view it because of like the reactions they might have to it, and then those things like latch on to the other people around it. So he usually keeps it like just himself to make sure like the job gets done or it doesn't get anywhere else or something like that.
Yeah, it's talking about like not recording it.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, and because it could be used in different ways. Because the one movie, I think, The Conjuring, was based off of like an exorcism, like tapes, and
but they weren't priests. Like the Conjuring people, they weren't priests. They were just like, I don't even know what they were. Like,
and he talks about how like he doesn't like that because it takes like the true religion out of it. It makes it like anybody can go do it. And he like said like, don't do it. Like, it's not in your power, and it's like it's not even his power. It's God. It's he's just acting as that instrument. And it's good to like hear that sometimes. It's like, okay, it's like it's God's will. Anything to happen, we can try our best to do whatever we want. But at the end of the day, if it's not God's will, it's not God's will.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people think they can also like challenge it. Like, oh, I believe in God. I can challenge this thing. And it's like, no, you can't. Sit down before you getting yourself like into something absolutely horrendous where you're gonna need a priest. So like, don't do any of that kind of crazy stuff.
Yes,
that's me and my buddy used to talk about that. It's like, because we're like, dude, God won. Why? What are we scared of? Just tell the devil like to go, hey, go shoot, like loser, or like just like and something like that. I'm like it sounds like it sounds cool, it sounds fun, but at the end of it, it's like, ugh.
It's
And then it also like really made me think about like those like mega churches, like those like when they're like casting out demons. What is actually happening there?
It's just a show.
Well, I told you that one story when I was I used to go to a certain mega church close to here, and the pastor's wife gets up on stage and she goes, I'm inviting the Holy Spirit, invoking the Holy Spirit to help us all like talk in tongues. And then she just starts like immediately just like a turkey, just starts and like everybody in the audience just started doing the same thing. And I was sitting there and I was like, oh no, I'm in the wrong place. I was like, oh, this is, oh no. I know it's something that's possible, but I don't think that's something you can just like go into in and out of. Like she would do her turkey thing for a second. Then she'd be like, come on, guys. And then back into the turkey thing. I'm like, I don't think that's how that works at all.
Yeah. I mean, the devil likes to sensationalize things, right? Like he likes to make things like really big and kind of like things. Like I always find it kind of interesting in the Gospels, like whenever Jesus would do a miracle, he would almost always tell people like, do not tell anyone about this.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone about this. Like they don't need to hear about it. It's not important. But the devil, like he wanted to make everything like as big of a thing as possible.
Yeah, it's
like,
a show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's illusions. And that's why I particularly don't necessarily like the like charismatic movement, because like you're basically chopping up everything that has to do with God and Jesus and all the great stuff into a feeling and feeling alone. It's like I'm going to a rock concert basically, and I'm overzealous, and I'm just feeling all this music, and it's just taking over me, and I'm crying, and I'm feeling all this way, and that's how I should always know that I'm experiencing God or Jesus. And it's like there are plenty of other times in my lowest of lows when I was like bawling on the floor when I felt God, and I wasn't like, oh, super happy and cheering. Like I felt him most of the time in my lowest lows, because that's when I would call on him the most. Unfortunately, I should do it 24/7, but and so it's like I don't want to associate God only with an uplifting feeling like that. Like he's present throughout all of it, and so I don't want to just like corner him into that feeling alone. So I don't particularly enjoy the charismatic movement, really. But I mean, it's nice if you want to go do that outside of Mass, like Holy Hour and stuff like that. And that's totally fine to like enjoy him then. But like, I don't think when it's time to be in the presence of God and the Eucharist and, heaven meets earth, time freezes for a moment, like that's what Mass should be. It shouldn't be a rock and roll concert.
Could not agree more. And this will be our hard segue into our next podcast. So we have Symon Graham here.
Oh man, we're way past.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to introduce him anyway. Okay. Let people know, and obviously it'll be on our thumbnail. Right. But you talking about the charismatic movement, like it's feeling is definitely important. But you're right, it's not everything is. Yeah. And we are gifted with like having feelings, which helps us get that connection. But I really like when you get to go like go to Mass, get to receive the sacrament, then go to adoration, but then also like sometimes it's nice to have like the extra music, a little bit. Like at CFL, they used to do it when I was younger. It felt like it was 8 hours. Yeah, it probably was only 3 hours, but it felt like insanely long. And CFL is a beautiful I'm another podcast probably go deep into what actually like happens at Catholic Family Life. Yeah. But so that adoration night, you have all the youths. It's in a huge room. It's just full. It's just so many kids, and starts with like adoration, and everyone's just silent for like an hour. Yeah, and it is beautiful. People are crying. You're with God, and then as like our attention spans aren't there, then music starts to play, and then it just kind of brings everyone back, and it just hits so deep. And then it just ends with silence and then benediction. It doesn't get better than
It's just beautiful.
Oh my goodness.
Can I throw through two I was about to say through terms. Can I throw two terms at you? Yeah. So this is what I heard that I thought was kind of interesting, because you said something that was really interesting about kind of like the charismatic movement. Well, there's emotional surrealism and spiritual realism. And too many people get caught up in emotional surrealism and mistake it for spiritual realism. Yeah. Right? Is that kind of like your experience of like when you're talking about the charismatic movement?
Yeah, basically. Because so before I started on my journey to become Catholic, not fully Catholic either, by the way, I'm not even baptized yet. So me and my current girlfriend, when we first met, like we were too afraid to go to church on our own, and then we met and we're like, oh, let's go to church. So we went to this non-denominational church, and, you walk in and there's 15 people up on stage. They're all singing. There's lights going off. There's smoke out there. It's crazy. It's a rock concert. And I was like, what? I thought I was here. Okay, whatever. And we just walk in, and she wants to sit up near the front. And she's all into it and just going ham or whatever, and I can feel everything in my chest. I was like, this is so loud. I can't hear God at all. The first couple of weeks I went, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. But then, once you get past the luster of it, it just becomes this isn't how it's supposed to be, at least in my humble opinion. But and then the rest of the preaching just becomes what he decided he wanted to teach on today, because that's what he felt, and then it's his interpretation and yada yada yada. And it's just I'm not going to get the fullness of the Bible, one, if I were to come here every single Sunday throughout a whole year. You're just going to pick whatever you think it is. If you go to Mass every single day for one full year, you'll get the whole Bible. And then I go to this pastor guy, and it's just he favorited this today, and this was his interpretation, and yada yada. And then we have a big old band at the end again, and then we're all just oh yeah, we're just leaving. I'm just this was only about feelings. He's up there screaming and yelling, talking about stuff that you're so distracted by the energy in the room that you don't like truly like think about it, you know, what he's saying. You got the people in the front that are like, amen, hallelujah, you know, just yelling. And I'm like, do you know what he said? Like, if I asked you after this was done, if I asked you what he said, do you really know what he was saying? Or were you just so taken aback by like the emotional feeling in the room that you're just like, well, I mean, God was there. That's your answer. You didn't take anything away from it. Like, you know, you go to mass and like you sit there and you're like engrossed in what's going on, and like you're engrossed in the word, and you're learning straight from the Bible, whole passages instead of the pastor taking out this sentence that just happens to pertain to the non-denominational's way and belief instead of the full pastor. And it's just like, you know, you get the fullness of the faith rather than like this guy's interpretation and segmented like picking of it. And it's like, yeah, well, it just wasn't it.
Yeah. So how did you? So you went to that you had that experience, and then what from there? How did you find the Catholic Church?
Yeah. So good question. So our friend Zach. Yeah, we're doing a good job.
Good question.
Doing a good job. Yeah. So my buddy Zach. Oftentimes he's my neighbor, but I've known him for far longer than that. We would sit around and sit outside, whether it was snowing or hot as crap outside, and we'd sit around a little fire, and we would just talk about God and life and like everything that we're like dealing with, you know, real man stuff. And I would ask him questions because I was curious and I wanted to know, because like I learned about this from this, and this is what they're preaching here, and like, what do you think about that, and what's the thought on this? And he's Catholic, so he would give me his Catholic interpretation, and then I would go to the non-denominational church, and then they would say some stuff, and I was like, those two don't match. Why is that? And then I would do some research, and I do some research, and I do some research, and then I definitely encourage everybody to do research, like on the early church fathers, the teachings from then till now, rather than, you know, from when Martin Luther stapled his theses till now. Well, we got it wrong for 1,500 years. The word straight from God was wrong, and the teachings of the early church fathers that come almost directly from Jesus are wrong. Then you're questioning God's word. And then I was like, okay, like, it's clearly like, because it was pursuit of truth. It wasn't pursuit of feelings. It wasn't pursuit of, I feel God. It was like, I want the truth. And so I realized that like the non-denominational church was not teaching what is the fullness of the faith, which has always been the fullness of it since the beginning. And so then I was like, okay, it's time to walk away. Yeah, because I'm here for the truth. I don't care how much it like bothers me that it might not agree with what I'm saying. If it's God's word, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what I think. It's like, that's God. And a lot of people have a hard time like understanding the like potence of what that means. You know, it's God, your creator. Your creator is like, this is what it is. And you're like, no, it's not. Like, who are you, dude? Whoa. That's how Lucy got dipped out, you know? Like, who are you? So it's it just came down to like submitting myself, being obedient, having humility, and being humble, you know, not being prideful or boastful about my opinions or like what I thought was right. It was like, you know, I don't know everything. I'm a monkey, you know, like I don't know everything. So I need people who are a lot smarter than me and a lot more educated than me to like show me like the truth. And then for me to fact check it, because obviously I'm not going to believe everything that everybody says. That's dumb. But, you know, so then I started my journey, I guess. I pulled my girlfriend along with me too. She was very much like, I like the rock concert. I was like, no, it's not the truth. You're coming with me. Yeah, no, but I gave her the option. I was like, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But first, why don't you read a little bit of this? Why don't you read this early church? Why don't you read this? And then she was like, yeah, you're right. And I was like, I'm not right. He's right. They're right. But I'm just showing you.
Was there any church father in particular that you had like a special affinity towards, you think?
No, because it was just like a mass consumption of like the teaching. I was more concerned about what they were saying rather than like who they were, you know, because I just wanted to know. I was like, okay, Zach said this is what the Catholic faith believes in, and this is what my pastor said. is the real thing. So I'm just going to go find as many teachings as I can from the early church fathers and compare the two. And most of the time, all the time, Zach's Catholic opinion was what they taught. And it's like, okay, well, this is the truth then. Like, these are the people that are like, they were taught by the apostles, who were taught by who? Jesus Christ. So it's not going to be wrong, you know? It's not a game of telephone, you know, especially if it's like been passed down and it's still the same. Because you can compare what's current versus what was then, and it's the same thing. Might be a little bit more refined, but in essence, it's the same, you know?
Right.
So like, that's why I hate the argument. It's a game of telephone, you know? They said this then, it's different now. Like, do the research. No, it's not.
The funny thing about that is that even if they are wrong, 9 times out of 10, they're still going to be more right than anyone who comes, 1,000 years later.
Yeah, who are you? And then people who are like Martin Luther, they have quotes of him talking about the importance of Mother Mary and a bunch of other Catholic teachings that like none of the people after that Protestant Reformation believe in. And it's like, even your father believed in these things and you deny them. It's like, and then how many denominations do you have of Protestants? You have like over 1,000. It's crazy. They pop up everywhere. You're like, who's this? I don't know. Who's that? I don't know. And then you just pick and choose which one you feel the best at. And it's like, that doesn't seem like God. God would never, his word doesn't change. And you just want to keep changing it? That doesn't sound like God. You know, just a bunch of like common sense, like coming into the thought process of like the breakdown of what is the truth or how is it the truth, you know? And just do your research. Like, don't believe every TikTok video and Instagram reel that you scroll by. Like, fact check that.
Why do you think more people don't have like that thought process? They hear it and they're just like, oh no, like this is wrong. Like this, I feel good here. Like I like this. Do you think it's like a lot of like the social media that they're like, they think they can find anything and they can just, like you can, like it's proven you can find a resource for anything you said. Like I said, coffee makes people blind.
Yeah.
I can go find that.
Yeah.
So do you think we have too much information now?
Yeah, well, everybody's a journalist now. You can take up your phone, any one of us, and you can write anything anywhere and post it. And if people seem to, for whatever reason, just agree with that opinion, and you get a small populace because it literally goes all over the world in an instant, you know, anybody can become a journalist. Anybody can become somebody who puts an opinion out there, and all of a sudden that opinion is what hundreds of thousands of people believe, you know? So it's like, I don't know what happened. I mean, obviously it would be social media that like caused our attention spans to shrink. I think it is actually is less than a goldfish. I think that's a fact. Why don't you look that up and fact check me, people? You know,
Brian?
Yeah, Brian. Tell me if that's true. But I'm pretty sure it's that, and it's just like they just consume constantly. That's what you're constantly doing: scrolling, consuming. You know, like that wasn't at all how it was not even 50 years ago. You know, and now it's just there's plenty of research that you could do to find out like how that has such a large effect on our processing of information or our taking in of information, or like the amount of ignorance it brings to us as people. You know, the power of your phone, having like a super mini computer in your pocket at all times can like really nullify like your own common sense, your ability to have your own common sense. You're just like, you know, people used to pull out maps in their cars and had to figure out where they were, where this was, how to do this thing. Now you just type it in, you hit this, and you just do, and you just pay attention to that. And so now you ask most of the kids nowadays, oh, where is this at? And they're like, I just put it in my phone. And you could ask, you know, my father or something, and he'd be like, well, you go to this street, you take a right at this street, you do this at this street. Like the amount of information they withhold in themselves versus like what we do now and how they consumed it versus how we consume it is vastly different. And I think it has greatly affected our like capacity for like common sense at times. And it makes it really unfortunate because a lot of people are easily manipulated now.
Very. And I like your like logical approach to faith. So I'm a cradle Catholic, born Catholic, raised Catholic. It's all I've ever known. Excuse me. And we talked with another guest, Jack, about like when you're like 18, so your formative years, and you're questioning a lot to figure out where you're going. And I never like left the faith, but I was like strongly considering like, I guess, other options, making sure I was in the right spot.
Yeah.
You know, and I did exactly what you did. I'm like, okay, so let's look at history. Okay, it goes, all right, Catholic starts here, Protestantism's here, and then I look at the other like Eastern religion, like, all right, nothing makes sense. Just logically, it just made sense, like the Catholic Church. And like that's kind of like lost with like our generation. What was the statistics that like how many people are just leaving the faith that are our age?
Oh yeah,
just constant. It just what do we do? Like how do we start to reconcile this? As it's like knowing you and like your friend group. A lot of you guys are in RCIA.
Yeah,
which is crazy cool.
Yeah.
So what did you guys do, and how can we like replicate that?
Well, one, just be a decent human being. You know, be charismatic in and of yourself. You know, attract good people, and then they'll listen to you first off, and make sure you know what you're talking about. Do your research, and then just like have those tough conversations. You know, I had a buddy of mine. His name's Armando. He's a longtime friend of mine. And we sat down and we had a conversation. You know, he's I don't know if he's atheist or agnostic, but we had a conversation, and it was a genuine conversation, like almost like a debate. You know, and at the end of the conversation, we gave each other hugs and kisses, and then we left, and we were friends. We're still friends, you know. But then I had another conversation with somebody I won't name that like it just became him like completely like crapping on my religion and just being absolutely disrespectful, saying super heretical things to me, and just like and like refused to listen. So then it was like, what's that quote or what's that verse from in the Bible? Like, don't give your pearls to pigs, you know. So I just was like, all right, like, one, I don't need to be around this, and I don't need to consume this from you. And the fact that I even said like this is offensive to me, you know, I'd appreciate it if you didn't talk about my stuff like this. And he just kept going. I just cut him off as a friend. So once you gather those kind of people that are good for a conversation and stuff like that, if you find them and they're interested in the conversation, or if they even are believers but like want more of it, and they're willing to have those deep conversations, be like, well, why don't you come to this and learn about it with me? You know, RCIA was the purpose of going there wasn't to necessarily become Catholic. I know it's the process to become Catholic, but it's also the process of learning everything about Catholicism, you know. And they tell us, preface it all the time, like, if you have questions, doesn't matter how offensive they are, ask them. And if you feel like at any point this isn't for you, you can leave. You can walk away. So I was like, okay, so I'm not stuck here. I'm not like I'm in I hopped on the train and I can't stop it. I'm going to become Catholic if I don't want to be. But I do, and it's because I have a space where I can ask those questions, and I can have those conversations with people who know the faith. And so bringing people who are interested and were able to have those kind of debates and those kind of talks to a place where then we could have those kind of debates and talks with people who are more educated in that area allowed for like the pursuit of the truth, becoming Catholic, you know. So like, and then things like what Jack, I can never pronounce it. The
Francesca.
No, I mean his last name, sure, but I meant more like the young adult.
Oh, Benny Vidi Vici.
Benny Vidi Vici. Yeah. Yes, I can't say that 5 times, but like, you know, something like that too, where you have a community. Because like I went to the it's actually supposed to be this next Saturday too, the men's breakfast. Yeah, I went to the men's breakfast for the church, and you walk in and it's a bunch of bald and or gray hair. Love them all, they're great, you know. But like, there's no youth there, and it's like, you know. This is a good place for men's community. That's great. And it keeps us all solid in our faith, and we have each other's backs. But, like, there's no youth here. Then you go to VBV. Yeah, you go to VBV, and there's a bunch of people your age that are, like, having a good time, joking, laughing, good conversation, good debates, you know, and it creates community. It makes you want to stay. There are plenty of places where you go and you just don't feel like, you know, it might be the place where you want to be, where you want to go, but if you're just surrounded by the wrong type of people, you'll leave. You know, even though you're supposed to be there, even though it would be super beneficial for you to be there, because you don't have a sense of community, like, you'll leave. where that's who we are as people, like people as like a being or like a communal type like being. And without that, we literally like wither away and die. So like having community in a place that's a community of like younger people, like will help bring you and bring others into the faith. And that should be the goal of EVV. And just like, do what the gospel says, spread the word. Don't be like zealous about it in a way that like pushes you away. I heard something on a podcast recently, like, don't win the battle and lose the soul. So like you should win the battle and win the soul, which is balance. So you got to figure out how to do that. Have that short conversation, plant the seed, but don't go so far as to like make them be like, all right, this is too much. So just plant the seed, and you don't lose the soul. So that's what it came down. Just a bunch of people I could have good conversation with, and just kept planting the seed till I was able to be like, hey, you should come to RCIA with me. And they were like, okay, So it's just a slow draw in. God had so much patience. Was it Lazarus that like died, and then he was like, yeah, I'll show up in a little bit.
Yeah,
like I got it. And they're just like, where have you been? And he's like, come on out, and he just comes on out. But he took his time, and like there was still much fruit from that. And there's patience all over the place. So like, and it's a hard thing to do, especially with social media and there's no patience, but that's a whole other avenue.
I think there's a lot of fruit. Before we get too far into, I want to talk about community more.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about just what the process for RCIA is, how you apply for it, and then just like what it is and where you go from there?
Yeah. So I talked to Zach, and he was the one that suggested, because I asked him, I was like, so how do I, after I found out that I didn't want to be in this non-denominational and I wanted to be Catholic, I was like, how do I become Catholic? How do I do this? I can't just like walk in there and be like, you're Catholic. Yeah. Get a little pin or something. Yeah. I don't know. So he said he had to sign me up for this program, and he let Keith know that I was interested in joining, gave Keith, I think, my email, my girlfriend's email, and my buddy Tevin's email. And he emailed us all separately and told us like when it is, what it is, and how it's going to go. I think it's 7 months of like time where we come in for once a week during Thursday from 7 to 8:30, and we sit down and briefly go over like some compact subjects that have to do with the Lord. And before we really got into even the Catholic side of things, like our sacraments and all that, we're only just getting to the sacraments, and I've been here for 5 months. So like the beginning part is just talking about like who Jesus is, our love for Jesus, how much he loves us, and like his importance overall. So it's a good base and foundation of building a relationship with the Lord. And I've had conversations with older Catholics before, or even older ex-Catholics, and they talk about how like the main reason why they stopped becoming Catholic or fell off or whatever was because they never really truly thought that they like had a relationship with the Lord. I was like, really? I had a conversation with my pastor at the non-denom, which is an interesting story too. And his excuse for leaving Catholicism was that they just didn't have a relationship with Jesus. I was like, that's it? You left the faith and became a mega church owner just because you didn't feel like you talked to God that much? I was like, that's crazy. And then I go to RCIA, and thank God Keith is an ex-Protestant pastor. So he knows the Bible through and through. So he has this loving relationship with Jesus, and now a wonderful relationship in the Catholic faith. And so he constantly encourages the reading of the Bible and building a relationship with Christ. And those are the two main things you should do first, and then go into the deep dive of the wealth of knowledge that is the Catholic faith, because there's so much there. It's not solo scriptura, it's much more than that for a good reason. I think it's Second Thessalonians 2:15. Research. I'm not gonna say what it is, but and so he highly encourages that, and we just kind of build knowledge on who Christ is, and then build our own relationship outside of that. We learned the rosary there, and we prayed it all together at one time. They gave out free rosaries, gave us free Bibles, free catechism, and you can constantly just email them. I have so many questions. I just well, how does this work? And it was, so Peyton, my girlfriend, was like hanging on to being Protestant more so than I was. So we would get in debates all the time. And so I just emailed Keith. I was like, well, what about this? And how's this work? Because I'm having a debate right now with nobody and I need to know what I can say to this. And so then he sent me an email back, and then I look at Peyton and be like, well, this is what this means. And then she'd be like, okay. So, and a lot of it too, there's a lot of struggle when you go through RCIA, because it's not like an in-depth dive of every single thing. Otherwise, it would be like a 3-year, 4-year program. So some of the stuff they would tell us is just we could sit here and we could talk about it all day, but it's eventually just going to come down to an experience you'll have. Like Peyton's biggest struggle, and it's a lot of other Protestants' biggest struggle, is Mother Mary.
Right.
And so she just couldn't figure it out and just couldn't get behind it. And then she just decided to make the push anyways, started praying the rosary. And then she had some overwhelming experience with Mother Mary that brought her to tears. And she knew it was Mary. And she was she understood at that moment that it wasn't, I don't have to understand fully to feel it or know that it's true and real, And then she just continued to research and find out and understood then intellectually how Mother Mary was so important to us in the Catholic faith. And so a lot of it is just trust God, trust God. And if you do that, all will be revealed to you, and it was, thank God. So it was, and I've had a few experiences with Mother Mary myself. So she's a hard thing to get behind, but she's there for you, and all she's doing is just bringing you closer to her son, And I actually just recently got some books that are Catholic, Catholic reasons or debates against Protestants or whatever, just so I know when somebody brings up, well, you guys worship dead, or you guys, venerate, or not venerate, but worship Mother Mary, and all these other crazy arguments and stuff that I shoot Keith all the time. But yeah, RCIA is just a beautiful program. Wonderful people there. I think there's about 12 or almost 15 of us. So good solid group.
Wow, that's actually a lot.
Yeah. I heard last time it was only 2 or 3.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've both obviously been Catholic our entire lives, and we always grew up going to the Easter Vigil, which is when you come into the Catholic Church, and I don't know if I've ever seen a class
not that big. I think even when Kai came in, there's 3.
Yeah. So we got almost about 13 of us, ages ranging, but it's probably more so on the younger side, which is good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's just been a beautiful experience, and also a good start to community, because Tiffany is the one who invited us to come to VVV. I'm just going to keep calling it that. But, and now I've made some obvious great friends, and people that I've met through there, and plenty of opportunity Lord provides, so it's been a beautiful time, wonderful time. So yeah.
Guys,
it's fantastic. I think you had something you wanted to ask earlier, Ben?
Oh man,
about community.
I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
No, it's a podcast.
That's what we need. Yeah, we're just talking. I don't know if I had a question or if I just had sort of a general comment on I think social media, but I think we're pretty much far past it. I think it's really interesting. Just the way that the devil likes to attack people is he likes to confront you with the just every variety that exists.
Yeah.
Right? Every option that's out there, he's there to push it to you. Because in many more ways than one, or no, I shouldn't say that. It's actually the opposite of that. Life is typically going to the best path of life is typically going to be the most simple one.
Yeah.
Because God is simple.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He picks simple tasks for you to do. They might be really hard, but they're typically very simple. And the devil likes to like literally push everything onto you and say like, you need to do all this, right?
Yeah.
These are all the things you're missing out on. If you choose to do this, like, why would you miss out on all these different great options? And like, that's kind of like social media, right? Like you're just always constantly confronted with like everything, right?
Yeah. Well, I went and got my bachelor's of fine arts. So I went to art school, and I took a graphic design course, and it was like, they basically taught us in a small degree of like how to keep somebody super engaged, basically glued to the phone. And that's what you're supposed to do is in art is like get somebody to stare at your piece of art for a long piece of time or long time.
Right.
A long time.
Yeah.
And then in graphic design, it's like they have to figure out how do we suck the viewer into just being glued to your phone. And it comes down to like lots of colors, lots of flashing lights, big stuff popping up all the time, like your ability to scroll, just short segmented things getting blasted at you constantly. It's like, holy crap. We're learning how to brainwash people through the phone right now. I was like, this is wild.
It's like, go look at our first edits.
Yeah. I think you were just showing me that the other day. But like, that's what we were being taught in college in order to keep you on this. And it's insane, the like amount of like brainwash that gets put into that. Like the devil is just nothing but like temptation and distraction. That's why simple things become so difficult, because you become so addicted to these things that are just blasting you all the time. That dopamine spike just constantly, and it's like you have to let go of those things, die to yourself, and then get back on this path, the straight and narrow. And it's just like, it's so hard. It's addiction. It's all addiction.
Oh yeah.
And it's
like we're almost slaves to our phones.
Oh, for sure. It's basically an extension of who you are at this point. We're basically pseudo cyborgs because this never leaves your pocket, never leaves your hand, never leaves you at any point. So it's constantly attached to your body. So pseudo cyborgs.
100%. And that's where we're in an Exodus 90 group together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, like, I love this word. Ben, you taught me this word, the antithesis of
there you go.
like social media.
I was actually just about to use that.
Yeah, dude, I love that word. And it's essentially like just freeing yourself of all these worldly things and being off social media, spending time with God an hour a day, praying. Like it's not easy.
No,
you don't realize how like truly addicted you are.
Yeah.
To just like your phone and warm showers and or cold showers. My brothers are totally the groups watching these podcasts. They're gonna so your group and then the high school group. I actually help run I'm like the adult helper at like one of the high school groups.
Yeah,
it's actually insane. Like 15 to 20.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
dude. High schoolers doing Exodus 90.
That's nuts.
That's all awesome. The Catholics that know it. Like,
it's every time I tell a Catholic that I'm doing Exodus 90, they're like, "You're doing what? And you're not even fully Catholic yet?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" And they're just like, "Good luck." And I'm like, "Okay."
Well, it's insane. Like it motivates me, like to watch you do that, and then watch all the high schoolers do that.
Yeah.
And all the stories about like the first cold showers, like.
Yeah, dude.
Oh man. Like I gotta tell all the stories. Like there's kids like using soap to like block the water. Like Mara soap because
brick of soap. Like a shield on his back.
That used to be the strategy. You like just lather yourself in shampoo or like body wash, and then you step into the cold shower.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it makes it a little bit easier. Yeah.
That's what Zach was saying. He said he turns the shower to the wall and he like splashes it on himself real quick and then lathers himself up and he goes and he turns the thing on him and he just as fast as humanly possible he tries to scrub himself and then jump out. And I was just like, I mean, that's one way to do it, I guess.
My dad did Exodus 90 for the first time probably 4 or 5 years ago. He doesn't really do it anymore now. He does sort of like his own thing.
Yeah.
But he still takes cold showers.
Yeah.
Like to this day, he only takes cold showers.
Well, it's extremely hehealthy for you.
Yeah. He's in great shape. He's in better shape than I am. He's
well, that's good though.
Dad's a goat.
That's good though. I did so I used to like bodybuild and stuff like that. So
we were going to talk about this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. And so like I had to learn. Well, I didn't have to, but I decided to because I like fact checked everything. So I had a coach, and he would teach me all this kind of stuff or tell me to do all these kind of things, and then I'd research. Well, why the hell am I doing all this stuff? And cold showers and stuff like that was on the list. Like muscle, like inflammation and stuff like that, reduce that. So like recovery time is like not doubled. I don't know what it is, but it's faster. So I learned all about discipline and stuff like that. I went from, I think, 210 pounds to 155 pounds in like 2 months. And I stepped on stage. They put 3 layers of spray tan on me. I had to walk into a tent, put a sock on, and this girl came in with like an airbrush gun and just like spray tanned me. I could turn sideways and disappear. Like I was like thin. And then I stepped on stage in front of a bunch of cameras and stuff like that and did a little ditty. Well, yeah, and then got a little trophy for it and yada yada. But like, the peak week, which is the week before you step on stage, it's like you have to work down from a gallon all the way down to show day. I get an ounce of water for the entire day. Yeah, and my meals eventually became strictly only protein. So I was hungry before, hungry during, and hungry after because it was just meat going into my body. Nothing would like satiate my like hunger, and so like I had went through extreme discipline like through that time. It was also during one of my worst relationships of my life. Also during when I was commuting to college in Cleveland from Akron every day. It was my first year in college. So it was first year college commute, horrible relationship, and I'm like killing myself with dieting. Excuse me. But so like I know what discipline is. So Exodus 90 is just a nice little reminder of that. And it's I think it's harder to get into like a habit of discipline than it is to stay in habit of discipline. Because when you're trying to get into it, you're breaking things and rewiring things and then continuing that. But if you're just staying in discipline, like you've already built up everything, you're just continuing what you've been doing. But like with Exodus 90, and like I said, the way that they train you to be trapped on your phone, like putting the phone down, taking care of your body, working out, cold showers, stuff that is for us a form of suffering,
Right,
and the Bible is all about suffering and the growth of suffering, because you learn so much more through your failures than your successes, and so like suffering is a part of growth. I mean, they call it growing pains literally when you got shin splints and stuff like that. So like there's so much growth to be had through your suffering, as long as you like don't like let it consume you, like there's plenty of people who go through bad things and then let those bad things consume them and they get lost. But there are also plenty of other people who can go through suffering and come out the other end and kind of like take a look at like everything they went through and what they can learn from it, what they don't want to do next time, or what they can do better next time, and then bring that into the next stage of their life and grow like immensely from it. And there's been plenty of times when I went through something that I suffered through, and then I was talking to my buddy. He's like, yeah, this is happening to me, and this is happening to me. I'm like, oh, man, this is really similar to what I just went through. Like, let me give you advice. Let me help you out with your suffering, And so there's a lot of beauty and things to be had through suffering and from suffering that promote your growth and promote being able to help others and all types of stuff like that. So, like, going through Exodus 90 or doing the discipline, like it feels like crap now and it feels like you're suffering now, but like what you were going to get out of it at the end is going to be something that hopefully you stick to as much as possible for the rest of your life, because it's only being better for yourself. You're literally dying to yourself. Like all the things that you're so stuck on doing, you're just like, I have to stop it for the Lord, which makes it that much more important. But like, it's difficult, man, to put down my phone, especially probably for you guys. Like, well, you're not doing it, but for you, like, you got to edit the podcast, you got to put reels out and stuff like that. Social media is just creeping right around the corner for you probably the whole time.
Dude, how many times I've like post a story and then
yeah.
It's like, it's nuts. But if you look at it though too, it's not that crazy.
No.
Don't be on your phone excess amount. Pray an hour a day. Eat 3 meals a day. Work out 3 times a week, like stick to a regimen. That's simple things.
Yeah, taking care of yourself.
Yeah, like genuinely in praying.
Yeah.
But we're so engulfed this like the new normal that it seems just completely abnormal. It's just nuts, like countercultural. Like, you're off your phone, you're praying an hour a day. What are you, crazy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, then it like helps you also like realize like, oh crap, I am doing a lot of sinning. I'm doing a lot of bad.
Yes.
And I didn't even realize it. And you know, those things in and of themselves that you're like giving up are stuff like you realize is like, oh, okay, you know, this isn't good. And then it like highlights other things in your life that have nothing to do with Exodus 90 that are like, oh, I should probably stop those too. All this does is lead me towards this. I was listening to something recently, and they were talking about how like the venial sins, you know, the smaller sins, always just it's like an equation. They just simply add up to the mortal sin, you know. So like, you know, you're doing all these small venial sins that don't seem like nothing, and then next thing you know, because you've added this all up and piled this all up on you, you've done a mortal sin. And it's like reducing the things that cause venial sin will then ultimately keep you away from mortal sin. So it just shines light on like how many things like seep out into other areas of your life and you don't even know it. And then you're like, because we're getting rid of things, we're like, oh crap, like this is also related to this and this and this and this and this. Oh man, like,
oh yeah, it's all connected.
Oh yeah, it's enlightening.
Yeah,
for sure.
It puts a lot of things into perspective. A lot. Yeah, especially with the fact that like, because people think, you know, especially when they do stuff like this, it makes you realize like all the, you know, all the bad things you're doing, but then also too like all the good things that you're not doing.
Yeah.
And how hard it's going to be for you to actually get into the space of being able to do good things.
Yeah.
Because like I think it's St. Thomas Aquinas who talks a lot about like habits and stuff like that. And you know, it's so easy for us to sin because we're constantly not doing things that are good. We're constantly doing things that are bad that lead us into the habits of like being able to do bad things a lot easier. And then we try to be good for like a couple weeks. We're like, wait, why am I still not feeling the graces of being able to be good? Well, you've been bad for the last 8 years, and you think that all of a sudden you're going to become good because you did good stuff for 2 weeks. Like, it's not how it works, right? It's kind of like the opposite of everything, right?
Yeah, and the spiritual warfare that I've encountered doing Exodus 90, because like I'm trying to move away from the things that the devil has like deeply rooted into my like own psyche and my own life, like is insane. The amount of temptation that has just like entered into my life. And I heard another thing today talking about how like bad people don't really know that they're bad because they've never taken the time to truly be good. And so they don't realize how bad they are because they have no concept of the other side. So like now that we're getting rid of all this temptation and stuff like that, we have this outlook of like, oh crap, like I have been bad and I didn't even know I was doing this. Like I didn't even know it was this bad at all. And now I'm dealing with the repercussions of said things. And we don't even know the like, what do I want to say? Temptation is extremely hard to deal with, but it's more so when you are able to resist it than when you give in and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm starting over. Oh, okay, I fell in, I'm starting over. But if you're able to increasingly resist it, it gets harder and harder and harder and harder. But as soon as you fall into temptation, then you're starting back from scratch. And it doesn't seem so bad, and then you fall in. It doesn't seem so bad, and you fall in. But the more you resist it, the harder it comes. Like, that's why I couldn't even imagine, like, the Lord being out there 40 days, 40 nights, and the devil just be like, yo, you want some bread? And you're like, dang, I'm hungry, but no, no. But, thank God for his mercy because, like, we're all sinners. None of us are ever going to be perfect. So that's a lot of, like, the things that I hear about all the time. Like, we can't be perfect. Like, we can't live up to it. Like, yada, yada. Like, I don't deserve his love, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, we don't deserve his love. But he wants to love us. Like, that's the idea of it. And, like, he's so loving and so merciful that, like, he literally knows we're going to sin, that we can't uphold our end of the deal. So what did he do? He upheld it himself. He completed the sacrifice himself. Like the old kings, what they would do is when they would, let's say a smaller king needed help from a bigger king, right? And they were fighting a war. And so to make a deal with him, what they would do is they would take a bunch of animals and they'd chop the animals in half and split them open, right? Blood all over the place. And the younger king had to walk through the land, like the blood, And it's basically saying, like, if I don't hold up my end of the deal, I give you permission to do to me what we did to these animals. And so it's like, we made a deal with Christ. Obviously, he can hold up his end of the deal. We cannot. And so what happens was, I think this is an actual story in the Bible, I don't know where, like, who was in the story was like put to sleep by Christ, and he walked through it himself because he knows we can't uphold our end of the deal. That's the whole point of Christ dying on the cross. That's what that symbolizes. He's the ultimate sacrifice, the sheep, the lamb. And so it's him giving us a way to come to God, because there'd be no other way for us to be able to do it, to offer us up that forgiveness, because we're never going to not be sinners. It's impossible for us, but we can strive constantly to not be sinners. And so in that, like, striving for holiness and for that glory in God, we can be forgiven because he knows our true heart, and our true heart is for him. But he knows we're going to fall into temptation, and whatever that temptation looks like for us is what it's going to be. But, like, he just wants true love from us. And so we are choosing free will to pursue him. Even though we falter, we still come back to the straight and narrow, which is the path to Christ. And it's forever difficult, and it's not something anybody's ever going to get perfect. And there's plenty of people who are like, oh, I just can't go back to him. I'm going to get my butt whooped. You know, he's not going to be happy that I did this, that, and the other. But then you hear the story of the prodigal son, and it's like, you were here with Christ, and you walked all this way in sin, and you think that you have to turn around and walk all this way back. But as soon as you turn around, like, God's right there. You're just waiting for you. You just got to turn around. But it's people just don't want to turn around, don't want to look at him. Just like, I'm sorry I did these things, but he's going to be like, it's okay. Like, just as long as you're coming back to me, it's okay.
Yeah, and it's like, everyone needs to remember, like, we're never going to be perfect, like you said. And, like, the sins that we commit, not saying that they're not bad sins, but everyone's human. They're all committing the same sins. Like, I was watching a podcast with Father Augustine Weta, talking about confession. And he's like, he was asked, like, what's, like, the greatest letdown being a priest? And he's like, he makes a lot of jokes. He talked about, like, confession. He goes, he thought, like, hearing confessions about these crazy sins, like murders and stuff. It's like, he goes, it's just like the same, like, kind of things that we're all broken, having the same issues. And you just need to, like, swallow your pride. No, you're not perfect. Try to be better. Strive to be the best you can every day. And let's meet God and just turn. Like you said, turn around. I love that. Like, just turn around. He's there. He already died for you. He just wants you to turn around and be there. But
we've already won. You just gotta make the leap. You just have to trust him, and that's the hardest part for most people. Is you gotta have trust, because everything in this world probably points against trusting anything. You know, all the time. Social media, fake news, relationships, people, everything is just bad. You know, so it's like, how can we, like, trust him? And I was having this conversation with Peyton the other night, and I was like, if you can't trust the guy who literally created you, knew you couldn't hold up your end of the deal, came down to earth, knew that he was going to be betrayed, and still loved the guy, so that way nobody knew it was him that was going to betray him, and then was betrayed, then, like, flogged and flayed and had thorns wrapped around his forehead, and was brought over to a cross, and it was stabbed through his hands and his feet, where he suffocated to death, and he got stabbed through the freaking the lungs, all for you, even though he knows you're a sinner, even though he knows you can't hold up your end of the deal. He loves you that much. If you can't trust that guy, then good luck trusting anything on this material plane. Like, good luck. But, like, once you put it into perspective, like, the sacrifice that was made, he knew. What did he sweat the blood in Gethsemane or wherever he was at? Like, because he knew he was going to have to actually suffer and actually feel what we did. And he didn't want to, but he knew it was the only way that his creation was going to ever enter into heaven with him. And that was the only way he was going to get them to come to him and love him. That's the only way he was going to bridge the gap, was he had to die. He had to sacrifice himself. You know, they could have just killed him. They could have done all that, but they did probably the worst imaginable stuff to him and to be the example. And it's like, that's insane. I couldn't imagine what one of those whips would have felt like, rather than, like, you know, a plethora, and then just, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Being fed, like, wine and vinegar while you're up there, too. Like, there's absolutely nothing good going on in this situation, obviously. And it's just like, if somebody was willing to do that for you, knowing that you're still a bad person, then like you have to trust him. Like you have to trust him. There's no reason not to trust him at that point. There's nobody here on earth that would be willing to do that for anybody ever without being like, okay, I'm done. Like, let me go, you know? And so like, and he had the chance to just slay everybody. He had the chance to give up. He had been betrayed. Like, we have all been sinners. Like, Peter was going to betray him, or not betray him, but deny him. You know, he knew that. Some of his strongest followers, he knew that, but he still loved him so much that he was like, it's cool. It's cool. Like, I forgive you. Yeah. Like, I forgive you. As long as you truly pursue me, I will forgive you. You just have to admit it. That's also a hard thing, but...
Yeah. Pride's a tough thing.
Oh, dude. Yeah. And then, like, the love for him, too, is so strong that, like, I don't know if you've ever seen or read up on the ways that the apostles were killed.
Oh, yeah.
It's horrible. And for them to go through all that and their families to suffer for it as well and still not deny Christ.
Do you know... I'm sorry not to cut you off.
No,
do you know the story of St. Lawrence?
No, I do not.
Ooh. Do you know the story of St. Lawrence?
I don't know.
You probably do. He's the... he's the saint, so he was basically burned to death, like on a kind of basically like a stove.
Oh.
And he was basically being cooked on his back, I think. And they're lying him down over this, like, the flames are rising up. He's dying a horrific death. He's literally burning to death. And he calls out to the people who are burning him, and he says, "Turn me over. I'm done on this side."
It's a little
literally as he's being cooked, he literally calls out to his torturers and says, "Turn me over.
Yeah.
I'm done on this side."
Hey, we did really good for like
That was really quiet, though. It might not have got picked up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I couldn't, like, half the stuff they went through is just absurd. I couldn't even imagine that. But then at the same time, when I think about it, it's like, you know, if you want to, I'm not going to say no to Christ, you know.
No, you can't.
Yeah, I'll get martyred, I guess.
So I think we definitely can continue talking for like another 3
Yeah,
hours.
dude, we can keep going. I'm going to.
Yeah. So we've kind of like been ending our podcast with like kind of call to action, like something that our guests could want to leave with,
Okay.
like our audience.
Yeah.
So if there's one last thing you can leave our audience, just for this podcast, definitely get.
There's a lot of pressure on this statement.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so we're gonna clip it. It's probably Belichick, or you brother Bishop, like
Yeah.
And the
Good.
Pope.
Yeah.
Matt Pratt.
Matt Pratt. No, Matt Pratt. Matt Pratt, let me on your podcast. I'll talk forever. You won't even have to say nothing. No. If I had to say something to everybody, nothing now. But it's like something along the lines of like it's okay. Like, you're going to do bad things and it's okay. Like, don't give up on that stuff. Like I said, you find most of your growth within your failures. Don't give up on that kind of stuff. You know, it's going to suck. Life's going to be hard and it's going to be difficult and you're going to have a lot of failings. But, like, you can't let those things take you away from, like, the beauty and the fullness of Christ, of God, or of whatever your destiny is. You know, there's plenty of things that are designed to take you off the path. And, like, if you do so, I think what I heard the thing where, like, the place where the greatest amount of talent is in the graveyard, because most of the people just decided to, like, I'm not doing this, I'm just gonna whatever, and they end up dying and never do it. And it's like, don't give up, keep pursuing everything that you want to pursue, especially in Christ, and just keep going, man. It's not worth not giving up. You only here one time, so you might as well make it the best time and do it with the Lord, with Him through all things. Everything's able to be done. You know, never give up, and do your research.
Do your research.
Do your research.
Beautiful. And this has been Podcast 24. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. I would love to be on another time.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, boys.